We are deviating today from the curriculum because this was something in our Bible reading that is very close to my heart. This passage, more than any other, I think, exemplifies what a pastor's heart should be. Let me just give you a little bit of background. The church in Thessalonica was a church that the Apostle Paul, with his team, set up. Maybe some of you are not familiar with churchianity or church lingo, but it's called church planting, like planting a plant, right? Paul, with his partners, had planted the church in Thessalonica. And so it's very much like us. Through me, the Lord has planted this church, the house, here in Reseda. Through the Apostle Paul, God planted the church in Thessalonica. But unlike us, he had been there only a few months. We've been together maybe 5 years, right? Probably they were together 5 months. So he poured out everything into this church, but then when persecution arose, they had to run away from there. It's in Acts chapter 17. In the middle of the night, they had to run away from Thessalonica, being torn away from the people that they had come to care about and poured their life into. And so from a distance, possibly, let me see, I want to get this right, about 200 miles or so, something like that. He is writing to them. And when he is writing to them, he had already sent to them a messenger named Timothy, one of his disciples, to go and find out how they are doing. How are these people that we cared about and that we have poured our lives into, how's that church doing? Timothy went and he found out, he taught them and cared for them, and then came back, brought a good report to the Apostle Paul. And Paul, in response to the good report, he is writing this letter. And he writes this letter about their mutual love, mutual faith, and how much they need to be aware when the difficulties come, because weird teaching is going to seep into the church. And so there's a lot of good doctrine here in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians 2. So that's what the Apostle Paul does. He wants to give them everything that they need in these letters about how the church is to be set up, how we are to care for one another inside the church. And as he does that, in the middle of it, there is the pulsating pastoral heart of the Apostle Paul. Let me show you what I mean. Let me show you. It's in chapter 2, verses 19 and 20. If you have your Bibles there, please open them up. It's not going to be there's not going to be any point to me pointing them out to you if you don't have your Bibles open. In general, what I do is for the passage that I'm preaching on, I leave it to you to open up. If there are other passages, it's not your fault that you don't know your way around the Bible, though some of you should know it better than others. The other ones I'll put up for you. But the main passage, hold it open. Chapter 2, verses 19 through 20, let me read that for you. It says this. This is Paul's affection for the Thessalonians. He says, what is our hope or joy or crown of rejoicing, boasting before the Lord Jesus at his coming? Is it not you? For you are our glory and joy. Do you see his affection for the people that he serves? I love that. Well, look at chapter 3 now. Look at chapter 3, verse 8. For now we live if you are standing fast in the Lord. It says, if you stand fast in God, if your spiritual maturity is our lifeline. It sounds like a formula for codependency for those of you who are of the psychology type. You know, if you live, if you survive, I live. You know, my life is tied to yours. It sounds like, and he's just pouring out his heart for these Thessalonians. And so you see my point, that Paul has this pulsating pastoral heart for the people of Thessalonica. And so I think here we get a picture of what a pastor's heart really should be like. And so, in a way, this is my heart for you. This is what I want for us here at the house. This is the kind of relationship I hope that the Lord will allow us to cultivate. First, we find out that Paul's relationship with the people of Thessalonians was like a mother. Look at this. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, verses 1 through 8 talk about this. But we just read it in verse 7, didn't we? We were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. What is a mother's love like? What is a mother's love like? A mother's love has no fear. Look at verses 4 through 6. I'll read that for you. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God who tests our hearts. For we never came with words of flattery, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. He didn't come trying to milk them for any kind of personal gain. God is witness. I swear before God, he might as well have said. Nor do we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as apostles of Christ. We didn't come as people pleasers. We didn't come worrying about what other people will think of us. That's what a heart of a mother is like, isn't it? There's a Korean saying that there are 3 genders, and I hope this translates, okay? There's male, female, and then ajumma. Okay, that ajumma is like the the she bear? You know what I'm talking about? The mother bear? The soccer mom. Okay, the hockey mom? Cool? The hockey mom, the soccer mom, don't care diddly squat what anybody else thinks. Okay? I'm gonna drive my minivan. I don't care what you think of my car, I'm gonna drive a minivan. Alright? This is my pimped out minivan. This is my mobile. Alright? You guys can't touch this. I don't care what you say. It's functional. It carries my kids. I know one soccer mom that she's got like 8 people in her family. 8 people in her family. And so she's got this, have you seen those Mercedes-Benz with like, you can stand in it, you know? And it's like the ultimate, it's not even a minivan, it's a van, right? When Noah's Ark, right? Noah's Ark, you know how many people got into Noah's Ark? 8 people, 8 persons, okay? And so they have 8 people in that family. I call it the Ark, okay? It's huge. And they're just driving around. They're like, oh yeah, I got my family. It's like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. They don't care what the mother doesn't care what anybody else thinks. She's gonna tell off the coach when she feels like the call was wrong. She's gonna go and talk to the student's mom, right? Korean mothers, anybody? Not here, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That happens because they don't really care what other people think. That's the point. That happens when you have a kid. When it involves your child, it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of you. No fear of people. See, I wasn't trying to please anybody, including you. That's what he says. You see, if a mother cares a lot, too much about hurting her child, she can't discipline her child, and her child is going to end up messed up. And they're going to get all kinds of weird counsel in prison. And when mom comes to visit him, he's going to say, it's all your fault. You're why I ended up this way, because you spoiled me to death. Right? See, we can't fear our kids. We can't fear hurting their emotions, and we sometimes have to go out because, being too afraid. Caring is one thing, but being afraid is another. In much the same way, I want to have no fear when I serve you. I don't want to be afraid of what the other churches think and how they think that we don't do the things the way that it's done everywhere else in every other church. I don't want to care about that. I don't want to care about what you think too much either. I don't care about how much you approve. I don't want to care about how much you approve of me or how well I am liked by you. Sometimes mom and dad are not liked. Sometimes kids will say to mom and dad, I hate you. But I need to be willing to take that if that's what it takes. That makes sense? I don't want to be afraid of you. I don't want to serve you that way. I don't want to be thinking, oh, what is Jeremy going to think about me? I'm not going to do that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? It won't be good for him. It's not good for me. And I'm going to tell him when he needs to hear it. You got to stop focusing on these other things, and I'm going to do that because I care about him. Though I may not show him because I love him. And my love for him overcomes my fear of his disapproval, right? I want to serve you that way. No fear. But I realize I am not that brave. I realize that I am very prone to think and worry about you. Whether you're going to be offended by what I say, whether you're going to come back next week, what kind of reputation we're going to have in the city. All of these things, I'm not immune to that. One of you guys left this church because you thought I focused too much on numbers. Really? I never thought that was my weakness. But I guess I'm prone to that. Sure, that's a temptation. I'll admit it up front. But I don't want that. You need to know I don't want that. I don't want to have a fear of people. Second, a mother's heart is gentle. What does the Apostle Paul say? We were gentle among you, like a mother caring for her child. And as much respect I have for the nursing profession, it's not a nurse. It's a mother nursing her own child, her own kid. What's the difference between a mother nursing her own kid and a nurse nursing the kid? It came out to me a long time ago when I was holding my own kid when she was born. You see, your first child, we only have one child. That's I'm not going to talk about that. But your first child is like, you're afraid that it's going to break. Right? It's soft everywhere, even the head is soft, and so you're just really afraid that it's going to break, and you're holding it, cuddling it, and just making sure you don't bend it too far, and the muscular nurse comes, grabs your kid out of your arms, throws your kid on the stainless steel table, grabs your kid by the neck, leans her over, goes, pack, pack, pack. They're going, oh, I'm my baby, right? And she doesn't care. She's just whacking that kid's back, making sure she burps right. Right? So that's a nurse. But mama's not going to be like that. The parent is not going to be like that. The parent is gentle. The parent cares. And as much as I said, I don't want to be afraid of you, I don't want to hurt you unnecessarily. I want to care for you. And I want to be gentle. I want to be a gentle person, but I realize that I'm not always that gentle. And Jeremy's like, yeah, that's right. But you know, if you see, there's this guy that came last week, I think it was Caleb, right? And I act really rough with Jeremy just because I do. That's kind of our dynamic, and he understands it as kind of me being affectionate to him. That's what I mean. But Caleb was brand new, and so every time I said something just rude to Jeremy, I looked over at Caleb. We're cool, right? You understand? It's all right, right? So I had to kind of do a double check. But the reason why is this. I remember there has been times when, because I'm a guy and there is a rough side of me. And those of you who know me well know that there is that. And I've noticed that sometimes people get hurt by that. Some guys, not just girls, but guys are sensitive. I didn't even know it, but one of the guys said to another guy who knew me probably a little bit better, he said to him, hey, I don't think Pastor Paul likes me. What? Those whom I love, I offend, okay? That's kind of where I was at the time. I didn't realize he couldn't take it, but I don't want to be that. I think the bottom line is probably I'll change my attitude toward Jeremy. I make no promises. But I want to be a gentle person. I want to be known as a gentle pastor that really, really cares about you, and it shows. Not fakes it. I don't want to do it at that cost. But it's gentle. And it's sensitive. Like a mother is sensitive to your needs before you even know it. Pray for that for me. I know I lack a lot in that area. Also, a mother is known for sacrifice. Look at verse 8. Verse 8. So being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves. Did you see that? Our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. Sacrifice. Not only did we want to speak to you the gospel of Jesus' life for our life, we wanted to display it by giving up our lives for you. Look, when we were torn away from you, it was not because we were scared for our lives and we just had to run away. No, we were torn away, but we wanted to stay. We would have given up our lives for you. I love that. What a beautiful heart. What does Jesus say? Jesus says this about the people that he cares about. He looks at Jerusalem. He sees that Jerusalem might be destroyed. He says, how many times I have wanted to gather you like a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. There's a story, many of you have heard stories like this, of a fireman. He's walking through a burnt forest. The fire has already come and gone. We have fire seasons in this area. You all know what about fires. And he's walking in the middle of the road, and in the middle of the road, there is a piece of meat burnt to a crisp. And he can tell that it's a bird, but it's so burnt beyond recognition, he can't tell what kind of bird it is. In disgust, because it's a road, he has to get it off to the side. He kicks it, and as the carcass rolls over, underneath the wings of the bird, little chicks come out, wanting to live. That was a terrible chick, wasn't it? In Korean, it's piak, piak, piak. But they're coming out. Because mom had endured the heat of the forest fire, allowing her own skin to be burned and her life taken away so that the chicks would live. This kind of heart, that is the heart of a mother. I want to love you like this. I really do. I want to be able to say, if it came to a choice between your life and mine, Joey, I would lay down my life. It's not even a thought. I want to be able to say that. And you know what? In my more holy moments, I can, but not always, in all honesty. But I want this. I want to be so sold out for the gospel that I would be able to say that for you. I want to have that kind of relationship with you. The love of a mother for her child. But this guy, he's not done. He's not done by describing his love as the love of a mother, like a mother, and also like a father. Look at this. Like a father. It was here in verse 8. Isn't it? So being affectionately desirous of you. Is that right? No, that's verse 9, I'm sorry. Verse 9. For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil. We work night and day that we might not be a burden to any of you while we proclaim to you the gospel of God. We worked hard. For you are witnesses, and God also, how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct toward you, believers. For you know how, like a father with his children, we exhorted each one of you and encouraged you and charged you to walk in a manner worthy of God, who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. He says, look, we cared for you like a father does. How does a father care for his child? What is particular to a father? He works hard. He provides. He provides for his children. And that seems to have been the practice of the Apostle Paul. When he planted a church, he would work with his own hands so that he himself would not be a burden to the church. In the very beginning of our church ministry, I tried to follow that a little bit, and I wasn't taking any kind of support monetarily from you. Eventually, by God's grace, we came to a place where I was able to receive some support from you, but even now, it is not that much. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the support you do give, but I'm also grateful that we can just get by this way. I'm grateful to be able to work a little bit and to have a little bit of other support so that we can continue to serve you and not be a burden on you. I'm very grateful for that. And I hope the Lord continues to allow me to do that. But at the end of the day, the consideration of how much or how little support a church can give cannot be the determiner of whether or not I will serve that church. The focus is not monetary. It's not money. It's souls. And if that means sometimes there is no money support, that's okay. That needs to be the heart of a pastor. And sometimes, like I told you a little bit earlier, right? When our bank account was kind of reaching zero, I got a little bit antsy about that. And I see that there is a weakness in my heart too of that temptation. But that's not ultimately the heart of how a pastor needs to be. It's the heart of a father who chooses to work hard. If there are not the resources, the father goes out and makes it so that he can provide. I want that heart. Also, he does this by teaching them to walk and stand in suffering. He sees the people and they're going to be persecuted. They're going to have hard times. And what he sees they need the most is good doctrine. It's a doctrine that teaches a great God, a high view of God, a God who is in control of all of history, of all your difficulties, of your cancer, of your loss of friendships, of your backbiting friends, of all of these things. That God is bigger than all of that, and God is working in all of that for His glory and for your good. That kind of a big God. Not the kind of God that if you press all the right buttons, He is going to give you what you want. He is not some kind of cosmic vending machine. He's not. But some people might treat Him that way, might think of Him that way, but that kind of God cannot sustain you in the face of the realities of broken hearts and broken lives and broken bodies. And that is the reality in which we live. That kind of God cannot, a prosperity gospel God that promises you health, wealth, and everything materially good, cannot sustain you in the face of tsunamis and earthquakes where thousands and hundreds of thousands of people die. But the kind of God who is preeminently high and also preeminently close. So high that He is in control of the whole universe, but so close, He's closer than your very breath. Only that kind of God can sustain you. And ultimately, if you have a God who harks to your every beck and whim and every prayer you pray, and you get that success that you've been whining about, whatever your form of success is, whether it's that A in school or whether it's that certain amount in the bank account, do you think you will end up worshiping Him at the end of the day? Do you think you'll end up worshiping Him at the end of the day? No, because your true God is your success. And what was God in the process? Just a part of the process. He's your slave. He's your slave. That's not your God. You just used Him for your own purposes. Is that the kind of God that you want? Is that the kind of God that you serve? No, that God is too small. You need a God who is able to handle your successes as well as your failures. And only the God who is in charge of history, who has His own perfect timing, is able to do that. Only our God, our Jehovah God. And finally, I want to say this, that a father desires to stay. A father desires to stay. And you may say, Pastor Paul, my dad left. And in the light of all the statistics that we have today, that the majority, is that right? The majority of children these days are born to single parents and they're single mothers? Really? And that's tragic. That's not the way it was meant to be. The fathers were meant to stay. Look at the Apostle Paul. Look at the way he talks about it. Verse 17. But since we were torn away from you. Did you catch that? Verse 17 of chapter 2. We were torn away from you. And he goes, brothers, for a short time. And he doesn't know how long he's going to be away from him, but whatever time it's going to be short, in person but not in heart. We're physically not with you, but you still have our hearts. This is the heart of a true pastor. I may be torn away from you. My body may not be there, but my heart remains with you. My heart remains with you. This is what the Apostle Paul says. And when I left, it wasn't because I wanted to leave. It was because we're torn away. Torn away. You know, I have a part of a ministry philosophy, and it is this. My desire, my hope is to prepare you for the day when you leave me or I leave you. Okay? That's my heart's prayer. The test of my ministry, the effective of my ministry will be seen when you are no longer with me, ultimately. How has the Lord used me to serve you will be seen in how well you do when I'm not around. I'm not around. I'm not naive. You are a hypermobile group. I mean, Jenny is just one good example right now. It happens. We understand that. We have an understanding. And who knows, the Lord may take me home. I'm not guaranteed tomorrow, right? Haven't been given some super revelation that I will live to my 80s. Look at my mom and dad. You know that. We are all fragile. It's a part of who we are. And so it's my job. Jesus did this. He prepared for his disciples for the time when he would no longer physically be with them. The Apostle Paul did this, following Jesus' pattern, setting up leadership in every church that he planted. The Apostle Peter did this, making sure that his teaching was put in writing so that the people who came behind him would have resources to draw upon to be healthy and to grow. Yeah. But when we are torn apart, let it be being torn apart. Let it be against our wills. Let it be in the clear light of the will of God. Let it be painful. You know, I grew up in a church, and I had served and lived in that church for 32 years. 32 years, guys. Minus about 2 or 3 of you. That's longer than any of you have lived. Right? 32 years. I went to that church, and so I left that church for a different ministry. And in that other ministry, the new ministry, one of the elders of that new church said to me, "You having a hard time?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "How have you been?" I said, "It's been hard." And then I expected him to say, "Oh, I feel bad for you. You know, I'll be praying for you. I hope you make a good transition." You know what he said? "Good." That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. And that's what I needed to hear. Yeah, when it's time to go, we go, but we hurt. And that's okay. That's okay. But we'll want to stay. I want to stay with you. I want to serve you for the long haul. I want to have people, some of you right now, 32 years from now, you've been in this church. And when you go away to college or what have you, you travel that distance, wherever it may be, to be able to get here. I would love that, for you to have that kind of heart commitment to your home church. That concept of the home church is really lost, isn't it? You don't fit, you just kind of walk down the road to the next church. Really? Does that really display the oneness that the church of God is? So, I'm praying that the Lord would do that. A desire to stay. Let me ask you, who then should have this pastor's heart? Is it only the pastors that should have this pastor's heart? Is it only me that should have a heart of a mother and a heart of a father? No, I think every Christian that is in charge of caring for somebody else should want to have this heart, this Christ-like heart of a mother, this Christ-like heart of a father. And that means those of you who are mothers would want to have this kind of pastoral heart. Those of you who are wives, those of you who are husbands, you will want to pastor your wife, your husband this way. I am speaking to mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, friends, that you would have a pastoral heart, a self-sacrificing heart that cares about the people that are around you. And let me ask you, how good you do in that? I can't speak English apparently. How good are you doing in that? How well do you display that pastor's heart to your Lord's Day school children, to your brothers, to your sisters, and to your friends? Are you so careful? Are you so worried about what your friends think of you that you can't represent Jesus rightly to them? Come on, really? But as much as I am yelling at you, I'm pointing the finger at me because I said all along, I don't fit this criteria. And I'm desperately in need, just like you, of, everybody, Jesus and His grace. Jesus and His grace. And so we get help from Jesus. We get help from Jesus, and I'm going to give you 4 ways that we get help from Jesus. Look at the first one. Remember that it is Jesus' love that compels you. What does the Apostle Paul say? We live not for your pleasure, but for the pleasure of God. I love that. I live for the pleasure of God. Grace, you were made for the pleasure of God. Gary, you were made for the pleasure of God. Gary says, no, I was made for the pleasure of Grace, my wife. No, you were made for the pleasure of God and His grace. Well, yeah, but grace is His grace. You know what I mean, right? Don't argue with me here. You are made for the pleasure of God. And when you are living for the pleasure of God, when you are satisfied with His pleasure, when you see that it is Jesus' love that drives you forward, when it is Jesus' love that is being channeled through you to these other people that need His love too, then you can love without being needy, without needing to please everybody. You are compelled, and you can live sacrificially, because Jesus' love is your satisfaction. There are going to be people, listen, there are going to be people in your life that are not going to be able to express gratitude or love in return. These past few weeks, I found, as much as I kind of dogged on the nurses earlier, I found a newfound respect for the nursing profession. When we were in UCLA, the ICU unit, and the nurses coming and going, to a man and to a woman, every single one of them seemed to genuinely care. I used to think that nurses had to cultivate a certain level of professional distance, emotional distance, so that they don't get involved and they don't get hurt when their patient, especially in ICU, don't take an upturn but a downturn and they die. That would be devastating. But somehow these nurses were able to at least give the impression of genuine, heartfelt care. I love that. So grateful. You know, we need Christians in those kinds of professions that have their love tank and have their motivation filled in Jesus, so that in the and their God is big enough, so that in the face of tragedy, they're continually able to love, nurture, care like a father, like a mother, like Jesus, being compelled by Jesus' love, having your motivation come from Him. Here's another secret, another key. This is what the Apostle Paul says. Who is sufficient for these things? Who can really manage? Who can really step into being an ambassador for God, representing God? He says this: our sufficiency is from God. It's not in my resources. It is in God's resources. He is the one who supplies them, who has made us competent to be ministers of the new covenant. It is God who makes you able to love. It is God who makes you able to serve. You know when I get kind of nervous and I get kind of antsy, I get kind of insecure about doing ministry? It's when I start focusing on what I think are my gifts or my talents, my abilities. When I do that, I realize I can't do it, and I get scared. But I think that is also a form of pride. It's certainly a form of self-absorption. It's not humility. You say, I knew a guy. When he saw somebody else talented, he would always compare them to him. Okay? Watch this, right? Oh, if somebody sings really well. Wow, you sing really well. You sing better than me. Somebody rides a bike really well. Oh, you ride that bike really well. You ride better than me. You draw really well. You draw better than me. And you think that to him that's humility. But do you see how many me's there are in that? That is self-absorption. That is also a form of pride. Do you see? What is true humility? When you're looking away from yourself and you're relying not on your own resources, but the resources that come from another, namely God, and the resources that come through others. What is the key of your not burning out as a Lord's Day school teacher, as a praise leader, as a student, as a son, as a friend that nobody else recognizes or cares about? What is the key to your survival when you serve the church and nobody recognizes your talents? It's God. God, living for the pleasure of God and receiving from Him the supplies you need to fulfill your task. God calls you, He will supply you with the equipment you need to complete the task. That's what I'm trusting in. Please, don't think, as arrogant as I may look at times, please don't think that I'm under any kind of delusion that I've got quote-unquote gifts or talents that makes me fit for this work. I've got nothing. If you are blessed through me, listen, if you are blessed through me, it's a miracle. Hear what I'm saying? Because it is through me you are being blessed, and it is God's miracle you are receiving. When you listen to the sermon and God speaks to you where you are, it is God speaking to you, not me. That's why it has any authority at all. Do you think I speak to you with authority just because I'm so much older than you? It's true. I'm older than a lot of you. But that doesn't really count diddly squat. I speak from the authority of the Word of God right here. And if I'm not saying this, I've got nothing to say. Nothing to say. It is His sufficiency, His supplying that makes this ministry doable. And even so, I fall short, so I love this. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Pastor Paul, I don't see Jesus in you. Then don't imitate me. But if you look carefully enough, because I know Jesus is real to me, you'll see Jesus. Heck, I see Jesus in you. You're not even a pastor. Right? I see Jesus in you. You got to be able to see Jesus in some part of me. And in as much as I don't imitate Jesus, don't follow that. Are you offended by me? Don't follow that bad example. Okay? One of you nodded when I said, are you offended in me? I hope you're not offended in me. but you don't have to follow that part. Follow the part that is a blessing, because that's the part where Jesus is. Right? Follow that. And that way you don't get disappointed, because I guarantee you right now, you look carefully enough, you'll have plenty of stuff to be offended regarding me. I'll tell you right now, no surprises, okay, so that you won't be too disappointed. I fall short in many ways. Imitate me as I imitate Jesus. And if you're able to say that to one another, you're not being arrogant. You're just rejoicing in God's work in your life. Cool? And I got this last one that I want to share with you. The Apostle Paul had to leave the Thessalonians. And apparently he had to do that a lot. All of his letters are because he can't be there to speak in person, right? In the book of Hebrews, the author of Hebrews, in a similar situation, was pastoring these people that he had cared about. But he had to leave them. And maybe there were other teachers that came too. And they had to leave. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it seems, he says this. Read it with me. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You see, your husband may leave you. Your wife may leave you. They do. And sometimes they can't help it. They die. And some people, when their husband or wife they loved for a lifetime die, how do they feel? They feel betrayed. It's kind of bad enough that the husband died, right? Or died early. And the wife feels betrayed on top of that. He couldn't help it. People are fragile. We leave. We're sinful. We betray. But Jesus, He stays. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Loved ones, when your sufficiency is in Jesus, when my sufficiency is in Jesus, we can love on each other like crazy without worrying too much about disappointing one another. It's expected. Let's have grace for that. And when we are all embraced the same grace, we can grow together in Jesus, because Jesus is the same. Say it with me one more time. Say it like you mean it. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I'm praying He, the Good Shepherd, the Great Shepherd. You know what pastor means? It means shepherd. There's no senior pastor to this church, ultimately speaking, but Jesus. Jesus is the Great Shepherd, and He will cultivate that shepherd's mothering, fathering heart in you as you follow Him. Let's pray.